Whenever you're ready. All right. Thank you all, everyone, for coming. This is my portfolio review with me, your friend Thomas. I know it's a little bit cliche, but when I was little, the Mythbusters were a really sort of formative part of my childhood, where I would always be very infatuated and really interested in all the stupid, asinine contraptions they'd make for all these stupid problems they have. And when I was little, I always thought that that's exactly what I wanted to do, that is a super cool thing to be. But as I got older, I had to be more realistic and realize that, no, you can't really just make whatever stupid contraptions you want. That's not really how the real world works. When I came to Barry, I came in as an undeclared business major, which meant that I was going to be in the business school, but I didn't know what. I think it was around October or November that I came to the Slackathon because it came to an underscore students email. And I saw there was a poker tournament and I was like, that sounds fun. And pretty much the second I came in here, Hackberry really helped reinstill that sense of whimsy and wonder, where I could make all these stupid asinine contraptions and really make whatever I wanted and run with that and develop that further into what I could do later on in life. Since then, I've become a lab assistant and currently am a lab director. And when I'm done with this, I'm really gonna miss this place. My theme is rapid iteration of prototypes through the use of PCBs and 3D design. And there's a lot there, but I feel like one of the projects that best encapsulates all of that is my senior capstone project, the Hypershades. The Hypershades are a prototype that was designed originally for the Norway Study Abroad class. And they were designed around the constraint of a topic within the electromagnetic spectrum. And my project partner and I, Cameron, chose our topic of impossible colors. I'll touch more on those on the next slide. And we were constrained around teaching to children, and specifically Norwegian children that wouldn't necessarily have a good grasp of English, which meant that we really had to dial in our signifiers on the boards. Just a quick overview of what an impossible color is, if you don't know already. They are colors that either by the way light works or the way your eye sees light, you normally cannot see. But by utilizing a thing called after images, which is when you see a very bright light and part of your eye becomes more or less desensitized to a certain color, other colors can become accentuated and exaggerated by effect. And so by showing you bright purple light for a long amount of time, I can make you see just green, whereas normally you'd see green with a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. And this is what it's called a hyperbolic green. And there are also impossibly bright colors, impossibly dark colors, and forbidden color combinations where your brain is trying to figure out why your eyes are seeing two different colors of light that really should combine to make white. And so for this study abroad course, me and Cameron really had to figure out what exactly we wanted this thing to be. We'd heard horror stories from previous groups that were struggling up until the night before their classroom pitch in Norway that were still getting their kids together, and we wanted to avoid that at all costs. And so me and Cameron had to figure out how to take ourselves as far away from the actual manufacturing process as we could. And so we really landed on this idea that we could make every part possible a PCB, and that would make it so we didn't have to fight for use on the laser cutter, and everything would be more or less very exact and very repeatable. And this let it be very scalable for the classroom, which meant that we could just design one thing and have a bunch ready for a classroom for 30 kids. We designed this around groups of 3 students, where each student would be responsible for interacting with one color of red, green, and blue. And with their lesson plan, they could all work together in groups and mix and match and create their own colors. Although the design stayed very consistent, we did have 2 rounds of PCBs for this because when we got our first ones back, there were quite a few wiring issues. But thankfully, due to the actual very rapid and very approachable PCB manufacturing method that we have here, we could get functioning and more polished boards back within a week and a half, which was really great for us. And although myself and Cameron were very happy with how this came out, I had a few lasting criticisms of this project that I really wanted to address in the future. Namely, I was not super happy with the fact that everything had to be on a base station on the middle of the table, since you were interacting with 3 different students. And so my goal later on for my capstone presentation is that I really wanted to make things really wanted to make things more centered towards a single user, where one person could have everything they needed on themselves without the need for anything else. And so starting in around October, I really dialed in that I wanted to do hypershades for my innovation pathway for Capstone. And that meant that I wanted to iterate and improve this pre-existing design. Namely, I wanted to eliminate the need for that base station in the middle, have everything that the user needs on their head. And my self-imposed constraint is that I didn't want there to be any visible wires, which was a bit tough to tackle. Around that time that I really dialed in that I wanted this to be my capstone, I was also given the opportunity to be a part of the Gadget project at Berry, which is a entrepreneurship pitch competition where students can pitch their ideas and can compete for funding. I ended up getting about $4,500 from my idea, and I was extremely happy to have that opportunity available to me. However, the design constraints of the Gadget project meant that I had to make a very hard design pivot very early on, just due to the limitations imposed on me by Chinese New Year, meaning that I had about a 2-week dead area that I could not ship for PCBs. And the way I pivoted this design is instead of having the user be able to select whatever combination of colors they want, this would instead walk them through a series of curated experiences that has been hard-coded in and is like a known quantity. I also made a PCB to help make PCBs. This is a fitment tolerance tester for these tab and slot fitments for the hypershades. The arms connect to the main frame by tabs and slots. We had them exact size, and when we manufactured these, the design tolerances from JLC PCB made it so that they didn't always fit super well together. And so this tolerance tester was there to help really dial things in. And during this time, I also found a new component called an edge connector, which uses the actual PCB as both the physical connection as well as the electrical, which I thought would be a really fun thing to do. And so later on, I made a very hard design pivot for my capstone and totally got rid of those tabs and slots that I had spent better part of a semester and a half working with, and totally went for these edge connectors. And what that allowed me to do is make these things fully modular and more or less have a sort of shotgun PCB production where I would make 5 or 6 versions of all the boards, send them away. And so I knew that when I would get them all back in about a week and a half, I would have at least one thing that worked. This worked out really well for me because it meant that I sort of had this like revolving door of iteration that I could do where I would know that, okay, this thing works great. What can I change about the other stuff to make it work better? And so the next time I sent off these 5 or 6 boards, some would have drastic changes, some would be just little tweaks, and you're always hunting for that iteration and that improvement. Yeah, and so we ended up having lots of different things. Y'all can see them on the table, and if we have time during the Q&A, we can pass them around. The next project I'd like to talk about is my lab table extender. This was my final project for the CNC robotics course. And my goal of this was to really help address and relieve clutter that I always seem to run into during busy lab nights. I found that as I get more and more into my CRT career, the projects you work on not only get bigger, they also get much bigger in scope. And so you end up having lots of bins, lots of different things on the table at once. And when you're working on our dinky little IKEA tables, no offense, they don't cut it. And so one of the big problems I had to tackle with this was meshing the digital world with the real world and having a 3D model on my computer that I could then create and that would fit perfectly with something in the real world. I really came to love parameterization in Fusion, where I could have the entire design boil down to more or less just a few numbers that I could change and that would change the whole model. And that meant that whenever I would cut out tests on foam core, I could take measurements, see how everything worked, and then make adjustments on the fly and really tune that design. The final parts were made on the Crawlbot and the plasma cutter, both of which also really help facilitate this rapid iteration, although they are a bit more costly in terms of material. Next project I'd like to talk about is the bed slide table. This was sort of a hackathon plus project because it wasn't quite done in the 4 hours. And this was also designed to help relieve organization struggles in my dorm room. I found that my dorm bed had honestly underutilized space because I don't use the sort of fall guard that you can mount onto the side of the bed. And I wanted to put a little slide out table on that. This model was also parameterized and was very easy to adjust the design on the fly, which is very important for time constraint situations like a hackathon. Meshing the digital world with the real world is very hard. That is very apparent with the crawlbot, because whether you like it or not, it does exactly what you tell it to do. And so you really need to make sure that what you tell it is what you want it to do. And something that Zane told me that really stuck with me for lots of this was that prototyping is problem solving. The more iterations of something you make, the more problems you uncover, the more problems you set out to fix, and the more and more granular you can get with your improvements. And so the more design iterations you make, whether that be in Fusion or in the real world, really helps to bring together lots of improvements that you can work on. The last project I'd like to talk about is the Mixie. This is an interactive MIDI controller that was developed for the advanced prototyping course. And something that we did in this course that really, really benefited me was paper PCB prototyping. And what's interesting about that is, even though we have like a very quick turnaround for PCBs to get them manufactured, it's still about a week and a half, which is a very long time in terms of coursework. But what we found we could do is print this out on paper, put it on foam core, and have a 2-scale replica of your PCB that you could lay out all your components on, and you could do like real-time adjustments to your ergonomics and get it dialed in exactly how you want it. And that really went hand in hand with our enclosure design that we made in Fusion, that was referencing our PCB model. And so as we would do these paper PCB prototypes, we could readjust our PCB in Easy EDA and redo it in Fusion, and we could keep doing these foam core prototypes and foam core mockups and really dial in this like pleasant ergonomic experience. What's next for me? Well, in a few short weeks, they are passing much quicker than I'm comfortable with. I finally get to go to Norway and bring the hypershades over there, which will be fun. Hopefully I don't blind the Norwegian children too badly. Although I haven't yet taken a position, I am looking at some roles related to interactive product design, like an associate product designer at KiwiCo. I just really would like to pursue careers that let me flex and grow my PCB skills and my 3D design skills, and really help grow my ability to effectively iterate and problem solve. When I get back from Norway, I would really like to continue working on the hypershades with Cameron. We've talked about this on and off quite a bit, but we'd really like to end up bringing it to market, finish the improvements we want, and putting it somewhere where people can use it. And even if we aren't the ones that end up being able to do it, we'd love to license it to someone or some group that has the means, that has the capital, because really we just like this idea and we want people to enjoy it. Some of you from our capstone class, you may know this. Please clap. And any questions?